What if I told you that the next viral skit, the next advert that makes millions, the next campaign that changes minds, starts with just a few words on paper? They were all written first. Whether it was a viral skit, an advert that made you buy, or a video that created awareness, they were all written first. The difference between random content and powerful content is not the camera. It's not even the location or the budget. It is actually the what? The script. And today, we'll be looking at how to write scripts that capture what? Attention. That get people to buy. That get response that is required. Welcome to Writing Skits and Advert Scripts. So we'll start first of all by defining what a skit is. So what is a skit? It is a short, self-contained, scripted performance. It's usually within 30 seconds to 3 minutes, designed to deliver one clear idea with a fast setup, a conflict, and a strong ending. So a skit has certain characteristics. It has to have what? A hook. And it has to come in early, within the first 3 to 10 seconds. It has to have one main conflict, a quick escalation, and a strong ending in the form of a punchline, a twist, or it could even be a moral lesson. Let's compare skits to comedy sketches and reels. Skit is just a short story scene. It can be comedy or it can even be serious. It is usually message or character driven. A comedy sketch is meant for comedy. It's meant to make you laugh and usually has a game pattern and it escalates to a blackout or punchline. When it comes to reels, on Instagram they are called reels, on YouTube shorts, and then you have TikTok. They are platform dependent and they can host skits, they can host trends, and even commentaries or storytelling. Okay, let's look at duration expectations. Skits can be grouped into quick hit or standard or full flavor depending on the duration. If it's 30 to 60 seconds, it's a quick hit. It usually has one premise, one escalation, and a sharp ending. If it's 60 to 120 seconds, it is standard with 2 to 3 beats of escalation plus a clean ending. If it extends to 2 to 3 minutes, it's called a full flavor. Here you have more character depth and you could have 3 to 5 beats and a clearer payoff. So let's look at the purpose of skits. Skits can be used for several purposes. You can use it for entertainment, you can use it for education, for creating awareness, and for branding and influence. When skits are used as entertainment, it could come in form of comedy, satire, exaggeration, but they're usually about relatable daily life humor, like family chaos. For educational purposes, you can use skits to convey moral lessons, safety procedures, and then do's and don'ts can even be conveyed visually. You can use it equally to create awareness on social issues like corruption, health, relationships. Skits can be used for branding and influence. In this case, it could be influencer skits, sponsored content, and personality-driven series with consistent character identity. The next thing we'll look at is the fast story engine. Skits are actually fast stories because they happen within a short time. And there's an engine that helps us achieve efficacy within such a short time. The fast story engine has a setup, it has the conflict, and then the punchline. In the setup, you introduce the situation quickly so that you can hook the audience immediately. Then introduce the problem or conflict in order to build tension. And then pay it off with a punchline, which could be a twist or consequence, but always end sharply. So let's look at setup. The first 10 seconds for every skit is crucial. What's your goal in these first 10 seconds? You introduce the situation quickly. Establish the character, setting, and tone within the first 5 to 10 seconds. Let's look at an example hook. Power holding company brought light, but the landlord now sells it in bundles. This one line tells us the character, the setting, the conflict, and the comedic tone instantly. So this is an example of a setup or hook. Then conflict and resolution. The conflict should come in within 10 to 60 seconds. So you have to introduce the problem early. Don't keep your audience guessing, and then build tension. You can use misunderstanding, you can use pressure, you can equally use temptation or fear. These are tools you can use to build tension. But don't delay, start the central conflict quickly. Now you have the punchline or resolution, the final 5 to 15 seconds. That's the payoff. It could come in form of a twist, a reveal, a consequence, a moral conclusion. But it has to be visual or maybe dialogue driven. The important thing is to end sharply. Don't drag. Let's look at the pro skit formula for achieving viral skits. This is the hidden structure behind most viral skits. If you master these 4 elements, you'll be able to create the viral skits that you deeply desire. The first element in this formula is the premise. Your premise must be explainable in 1 sentence. Secondly is the game or pattern. There needs to be a repeating idea that grows. You don't have to pack several ideas together. Focus on one idea and then develop that idea. Thirdly is escalation. Each beat must be more intense than the one before it. You have to ensure that as the skit progresses, each new beat must trump the one before it. After the escalation is the ending. You could use blackout, you could use a twist or consequence, but make sure it comes in quickly. The next thing we'll look at is the skit engine. What is the skit engine? This is the premise plus the word game. Let's look at the premise. What's a premise? Think of a premise in terms of a what-if situation. It has to be simple and clear. An example, what if a landlord now does subscription plan for rent? That's an example of a premise. The next thing is what? The game or pattern. This is the repeating funny pattern that you build upon your initial premise. You don't keep inventing new ideas. You heighten the same idea. Let's look at our example in action. The landlord decides to do subscription plan for rent. That's the premise. We now build the game pattern on it. We can add water subscription, light subscription, gate access subscription. The pattern repeats and grows more absurd with each beat. Now the rule is this. One skit must have one game pattern. The next thing we'll look at is escalation. You can call this the beat ladder, like climbing a ladder. Each beat must be more intense than the one before it. In other words, beat 2 must stop beat 1 and beat 3 must stop beat 2 ad infinitum. Let's look at examples. In this our subscription case, beat 1 could be the basic plan. Gate opens only 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Beat 2, the silver plan. Toilet flush only 10 times a day. You notice that beat 2 is even more absurd than beat 1. Now let's move to beat 3. Goal plan. Landlord gives you priority PHCN, that's priority light. He controls your light, making it even more absurd. Now beat 4, the platinum subscription. The landlord controls your Wi-Fi password. That's even more absurd. So each beat must stop the one preceding it. Okay, let's look at comedy versus serious skits. For a comedy skit, there are certain tools you can use to achieve laughs, which is your goal. You can use exaggeration by blowing things out of proportion. You can use misunderstanding, people quarreling over things they don't understand. When the situation is clear that maybe both of them are wrong, or and then they are fighting over their misunderstanding, you could use that as a tool for comedy skits. Another one is irony, or even cultural humor. An example is a landlord sells toilet flush subscription. This is an exaggeration, and you could use it to achieve laughs for a comedy skit. When it comes to serious skits, the tools you use are quite different from the ones you use for comedy skits. Your tools include emotional authenticity. You have to be aware of the impact of your skit on your audience emotions. And the skit must equally be relatable. The conflict must be relatable. The audience has to be able to relate to the conflict. And in this case, you have to use situations which are normal, like maybe family chaos, things that people can identify with. And you need to have a clear message for serious skits. Your message has to be clear. It can't be ambiguous. People shouldn't start wondering what exactly you are saying. And then your resolution has to be subtle, in order to convey the seriousness of your skit. So let's look at an example. A friend pressures another into a risky decision and then ends with a consequence and a lesson. That's an example of a serious skit. There has to be a takeaway from the experience in order to serve as an educational tool, in this case, for your audience. Okay, let's look at timing and pacing rules. Remember, skits occur within a very short or limited time. So you have to observe these rules for maximum impact. The first 0 to 5 seconds, that's when you introduce your hook. Grab attention immediately. The next 5 to 15 seconds, that's when the conflict starts. Make sure you introduce the problem. And then the next 15 to 60 seconds, you escalate the tension. You heighten the pattern. You could have 2 to 3 escalations within this period. Then the last 5 to 10 seconds is where you have your punchline, your lesson or twist. Always end sharply. Let's look at pacing principles. These principles will help you to pace your skit in a way that will make it efficacious. First of all, we look at economy of dialogue. You have to learn how to say less and mean more. There's no point for unnecessary exposition. Dialogue that does not contribute to the effectiveness of your skit must be minimized. You have to say less and mean more. The next thing is visual humor timing. You have to learn how to use visual expressions to convey your idea. Reactions are actually jokes. So expression-driven acting sells the comedy. The next thing is what is known as strategic pauses. A pause heightens tension. So you have to learn how to use silence deliberately to achieve tension. And then finally, we'll look at your escalation rhythm. We already mentioned that, but we'll have to reiterate it. Every new beat you introduce must top the other one. It must be more intense than the previous one. So each moment must stop the last moment. Okay, let's look at skits for social media platforms. Instagram Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Facebook. We want to look at elements that will help your skits succeed on these platforms. On Instagram Reels, you have to keep it to vertical framing. Ensure you hook your audience within the first 3 seconds. Use loop-friendly ending. End where it can restart naturally. On TikTok, employ trend integration. You have to look at the trends, what is trending, and align your skit with it so that their algorithm can rank your skit highly. Now you have to use relatable hooks, quick, expressive acting. These are elements that will help your skit succeed on TikTok. On YouTube Shorts, ensure that you have a clear title that is relevant to convey the message of your skit. Because most of the users, first of all, look at your title. So ensure you have a clear title that is what? Relevant. Then you have to use retention-focused pacing throughout. You have to pace your video in such a way that you don't lose your audience and you're still able to communicate properly what ideas you want to communicate or what effect you want them to experience. On Facebook has a broader demographic, so your tone has to account for that. You're looking at both adults and the young people, so you have to ensure you use themes that will appeal to these demographic. And in order to succeed on Facebook, shareable themes such as family, relationships, daily struggles, these are themes that are shareable. Use such themes because it has been proven that on Facebook these themes are able to attract audiences. And your message has to be clear. Ensure you use fewer inside jokes. These are jokes that are understood by a little section of the population. So if you're going to use them, make sure you minimize their use so that you don't alienate the greater population that make up your audience. The next thing we look at is character development in short form. When it comes to storytelling, character development is an important element. And even when it comes to short form, like skits that could take like 60 seconds, character development or character change must equally be what? Clear. The character should have strong traits. And because you don't have time to build the character up, you need to introduce the character instantly. So the character must have what? Strong traits. Another thing is the character has to have a clear motivation from the onset. The audience must know what the character wants immediately. Another thing is archetypes. You could use archetypes like a strict mother, a stubborn friend, a dramatic boss, a wise neighbor. These are characters that people can easily relate to. So you can use them to help you introduce your characters instantly. Another thing you can use is what is known as a signature. Each character has to have his own peculiar or unique attitude for consistency. So that once the character shows up, we know, okay, this is this character. This character normally uses this phrase. This character has this attitude. This character has this obsession. So these are things you could use to build up your character and develop your character in such a way that even within a 60-second scene, the character can have maximum impact. Okay, let's look at dialogue in skits. There are certain rules for dialogue in skits. Because you don't have all the time in the world, use short sentences. Keep your dialogue short. And then use punchy lines, lines that will resound with meaning. You have to use subtext because that is how human beings talk. Human beings don't talk off the nose all the time. In fact, most of the time, we say what we don't mean and mean what we don't say. That is what subtext is about. You ask someone, how are you doing? I'm fine, when they are not. Use local language where relevant. Something like Pidgin, Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa for authenticity. But you have to ensure you use it where relevant so that you don't lose your audience. There's a golden rule here. If a line can be shown, don't say it. There's no point saying, I am angry with you, when you can show it. Somebody hitting the table, that's a sign of anger, okay? So visual storytelling is usually more powerful than spoken explanation. So learn to trust your actors and your camera. The next thing we'll look at is visual economy. Everything we do is still business. There's cost attached to even skit making. So you have to learn to make it easy to shoot. In order to do that, you need to use fewer locations. Limit the locations to 1 to 2 settings. More locations, that's more complexity and what? Cost. Minimal props. We don't have to go to space to get materials to make your skit. You have to learn to use only what serves the story. Clutter distracts from performance. Keep it simple. Now, the skit has to be what? Expression-driven acting. We have to see how the facial expressions, the gestures, they have to all come in. Because reactions sell jokes. Strong facial expressions tell the story without what? Words. Another thing is clear blocking. Know who stands where and why. Strong visuals tell the story without what? Explaining. Let's look at common mistakes in skit writing. The common mistakes in skit writing could be structural mistakes or they could be creative mistakes. For structural mistakes, where you have no clear conflict, where the audience cannot say for sure what the problem is, and then when you have a weak punchline or payoff, you've built up the tension and you fail to pay it off properly. Another one is slow beginning, where the hook comes in late. In these days of mobile phones and smartphones and then millions of content online, people don't have that patience for slow build up, slow beginning and late hook. You have to give it to them early. So these are the structural mistakes you could make with a skit. No clear conflict, weak punchline and slow beginning. You need to avoid these mistakes. The next ones are the creative mistakes. Too much dialogue, too much talking. Too much talking could weaken the tension. And then forced humor, people trying to be funny. Sometimes the funniest people are actually people that are acting what? Serious. They are trying to be what? Serious. That's how they are able to create humor, by being serious in a silly situation, for instance. So you don't force humor, you have to learn how to develop it. Another one is copying trends without originality. Everybody is dancing, you want to dance. Everybody is jumping, you want to jump. No, you have to find your own language, you have to find your own original performance that will give you the expected impact. Too many characters or locations for short duration. Skits, like we've mentioned, have a short duration. If you pack it with characters, or maybe you're moving from one place to other, like different places in that short time, you could create what? Confusion. So you have to avoid too many characters or locations. Now let's look at our comedy tools. What really makes a skit funny? Is it people trying to be funny or forced humor? Let's look at some of the elements that will help you make your skit funny. The first one is contrast. For instance, it's a silly behavior in a serious environment, or a serious behavior in a silly situation. For instance, Sophia in London was at a supermarket and he wanted to buy bread. He couldn't understand how they wouldn't give it to him to just go down the street. For him, it was a very normal situation, like you find in Nigeria. People are, okay, I live down the street, let me go and get money for you. So, but in that situation, he didn't know it was an entirely different culture and he was serious about it. How can't you just allow me to go down to my house, get you money? So when you have a serious behavior in a silly situation, or a silly behavior in a serious what? Situation. That is what? Contrast. Secondly, specificity. You need to use specific details. Don't just say extra charges. You can say maybe 15 naira per flush, like in the case of our subscription landlord. When you're specific, okay, it has a much more direct impact than when your description is what? Vague. Another tool you can use for comedy is heightening. Each bit has to go further than the last. Bigger stakes, more ridiculous logic. Things have to just get more absurd, more exaggerations as you move from bit or you move up the beat ladder. The final tool we'll look at is truth first. Okay, while exaggerations can be used to create funny scenario, you have to start from what the audience can relate to, what is real, what is true. You start from a real life frustration people relate to, like bad customer service, landlord wahala, traffic, okay? Then you now twist it. That is the final tool we mentioned. So we mentioned 4 tools: contrast, specificity, heightening, and truth first. The next thing we'll look at is strong endings. It's important that you end strong, okay? Don't fade out. Don't fade out. Don't give room for the audience to wake up from your spell. And there are different ways you can end strongly. The first one is to use blackout, instant cut, quick hard cut at the funniest moment. Like they say, you leave when the ovation is what? Highest. When you cut at that height, you leave the audience craving for what? For more. Another tool you can use is to end strong is reversal. Power flips. You can make the underdog to win against all odds. And then the villain loses. The situation turns against all what? Odds. That is what? Reversal. You're reversing the expectations of the audience. Another one you can use is consequences. The absurdity bites back. The character faces the result of their what? Actions. It is called poetic justice. And subconsciously, your audience expects people to reap what they sow. So you can build in consequences into your skit. This can give it a strong ending. Another one you can use is what's known as a tag. It's a short joke, one last short joke after the main ending. It's like a bonus punchline. Your audience are already on the floor, but you want them to, you want to just knock them out. So you can use a tag to give them one last joke after the main ending. But you have to be careful to ensure that whatever joke you're bringing in must achieve its purpose. Let's look at the skit blueprint or what? Template. Like every other thing that is designed or built or developed, a car, a house, they all have blueprints. They all have templates from which they are what? Designed. The same way skits require blueprints or what? Templates. And the skit blueprint or template has 3 sections. The first section is your title, your premise, your characters, your location or where, and then your game or pattern. You need to define these before you even write a single line of what? Dialogue. You have to define your title, your premise, your characters, your location or where, and then the game or pattern that you will use before you even write. The second part is where you arrange your beats. Your beat 2 must stop your beat 1. Your beat 3 must stop the beat 2. And if you're going getting in a 4th beat, it must stop the what? Beat 3. I think you need to keep it within maybe 3 or highest 4 beats. Because the human mind has a way of not being able to comprehend things beyond that 4. If you remember your phone number, you break it into chunks like 0803, that's 4 numbers. Some people go even with 3, 0803, some even 2. So you have to ensure that you don't have too many bits. In fact, 4 is the ideal, okay? And the 4th one might even be optional, depending on the nature of your word skit. Then the 3rd segment or part of this blueprint is the ending or tag, okay? The ending and the what? Tag. Ensure you end strong. You could use a blackout, instant cut, a reversal, upturning expectations, or you could use consequence. And then the tag has to be what? Optional. You have to ensure that final punch after the main ending is really, really worth it. If you're sure it is worth it, then go ahead and use it. Let's look at an example skit, a customer care pro max. We'll start with the premise and game. What is the premise of this customer care pro max? So in this skit, A customer care agent speaks like a motivational speaker. Rather than solve people's problems, every complaint receives an inspirational word, advice. Okay, so you can see the premise. The customer care agent speaks like a motivational speaker. It doesn't solve people's problems, gives them motivational or inspirational advice. So that sets the tone. We know the premise now, and then the game. We now build on that game. Let's look at the beats. So someone complained that their data finished. The customer care personnel gives a data is a mindset response. Okay? The next bit, bit 2. My money disappeared. Loss is a lesson. That is that's absurd too. And more absurd than the first one. The third bit, you people cheated me. A customer is complaining. Choose peace. Recharge again. The fourth bit, agent starts selling a course how to accept network issues. And then the ending comes in. This is a customer now. So you go motivate me, enter poverty, then blackout. That's the ending, a punchline. So you go motivate me, enter poverty, then you cut it there, blackout. Let's look at a few sample scripts for our subscription landlord. We want to do a scene breakdown. So let's look at the opening scene or opening exchange. A tenant returns late and then the gate is what? Locked. He asks the landlord why the gate was locked. The landlord says that he has a basic plan. The basic plan opens 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. But the tenant returned by 9 p.m. and that's the silver plan. Meanwhile, the tenant has a basic plan. So he came back late and couldn't be allowed in because his basic plan covered from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. He came back by 9 p.m. So that's the opening scene. The escalation. Water is weekend bundle. Toilet is pay as you flush. 10 flushes free. Then 50 per flush. These are the subscriptions the landlord is introducing. And then landlord claims it is for maintenance of your destiny. Now, the ending. We're using blackout in this case. The tenant asks the landlord, "Oga, how much to subscribe for common sense?" The landlord searches through his subscription, seriously searching. And when he couldn't find common sense subscription, he answered, "That one is not available on this plan." So it is the seriousness of the landlord in this situation that will bring out the absurdity. And then at that point, you can actually cut. So a blackout can be used to end the skit. Okay, now we've come this far. You're about to you've written your skit script and you're about to shoot it. There are quick checklists that you have to look at before you shoot. So our quick checklist before you shoot. The first one, is your premise a one sentence? Is your premise a what? One sentence. If your premise is not accommodated in one sentence, then you're not ready to shoot yet. But if your premise is in a sentence, then you're ready to move on to the next item on the checklist. Your pattern or your game, do you have just one funny pattern or several funny patterns? So if you have several funny patterns or games, then you're not ready to shoot yet. But if you have one funny pattern, then you move to the next item on the checklist. Your escalating beats. You have to check your beats. Is beat 2 more intense than beat 1? Is beat 3 more intense than beat 2? If not, you have to either rearrange them or rework them. But if the intensity of the beats increases with each new beat, then you're ready to move on to the next item on the checklist. The fast setup. Is your setup fast? Is the hook delivered within the first 10 seconds? So you check your skit. If the hook is not delivered within the first 10 seconds, then you're not ready to shoot yet. You will work it, but once you get it within the first 10 seconds, then you move on to the next item on the checklist. A sharp ending. Does your ending drag? If it drags, then it's not ready for shooting yet. You need to rework it. But if it is sharp and ends cleanly, then you're ready to shoot. So your checklist is ready. Once all of them have been ticked off, you're ready to shoot. So that brings us to the end of the skit writing script. With your checklist in hand, you're ready to write skits that would go viral. Now, welcome to the part 2 of our script writing for skits and adverts. In this part 2, we'll be focusing on writing adverts and promotional scripts. Here you get a complete professional guide from concept to production ready scripts. You learn how to master persuasion, structure, and platform specific writing for every format. So what is an advert script? An advert script is a short, persuasive written plan. Persuasive written plan designed to promote a product, service, idea, event, or brand using structured storytelling and clear call to action. Now, it has well-defined purposes. It is written to capture attention, create desire, build trust, and drive action. What are the characteristics of effective short-form adverts? There are certain characteristics, including immediate hook. A short-form advert has to be able to grab your attention within the first 1 to 3 seconds. They usually have one main message. The message is focused on a single clear value proposition. And they have emotional appeal. They have to have strong emotional or logical pull on the audience. And then there should be a clear call to action. In other words, at the end of the day, the audience must be clear on what action to take. It might come as a repeated call to action with tight timing and rhythm. What are the duration expectations for adverts? You could have a 15 seconds advert, a 30-second advert, or a 60 seconds advert. The expectations are different for these different time frames. If it's a 15 seconds advert, normally you have like one hook, one key benefit, one proof, and one call to action. For a 30 seconds advert, you have a hook, a problem or desire. You may have 2 to 3 benefits. Then you bring in your proof and call to action. If it's a 60 seconds advert, you could employ a mini story, an emotional build, offer and proof, and then objection handling, and then a strong call to action. We'll break down some of these concepts as we go further. What are the purposes of adverts? Adverts have several purposes. You could want to sell something. That's sales, direct response. Your goal is to make someone buy, register, click, or call today. Adverts can be used to create awareness. In this case, your goal is to make people remember your brand long term. You could equally use adverts for education or public service. The goal here is to probably change behavior with respect to health, safety, civic awareness. Branding and influence. Adverts can be used for For branding and to exert influence. Now, the goal here is to build authority, personality, and long-term trust. Okay, let's look at the core frameworks of an advert script. We look at the 3 persuasion models. Remember, the goal of an advert is really to persuade the audience to respond in a certain way. And these 3 models are used to achieve this. The first one is the AIDA model. We have the BAS model and the FAB model. The AIDA model is an acronym for attention, interest, desire, and action. AIDA, attention, interest, desire, and action. So you grab the attention of the audience, you heighten their interest, build it into a desire, and get them to act. In the PAS model, PAS stands for problem, agitate, solution. Problem, agitate, solution. So you introduce the problem or identify the pain. Now you intensify it by throwing more light on it, okay? And then intensifying the consequences of the situation so that the audience can even understand more about the problem and then you introduce the solution. That's the PAS, problem, agitate, solution. The FAB stands for features, advantages, and what? Benefits. Features, advantages, and what? Benefits. So you introduce the features, the advantages of these features, and then the benefits to the what? Audience. So let's look at the AIDA model. This is the classic model for advertisement. So attention, you grab the attention with a bold hook. It could be a question or a shocking what? Visual. Something to grab the audience attention. Number 2, interest. Introduce the what? Offer and why it matters to the what? Audience. Then you move on to desire. Build emotional or logical what? Desire for the product or outcome. Tell them exactly what to do. For instance, if you want them to register, you tell them register, or maybe to click, or to call, or to what? Buy. The next one, the PAS model, is also known as emotional what? Persuasion. You want to work on the emotion of the what? Audience. So you identify the problem, you agitate it, and then introduce your solution. So you identify the pain, intensify the consequences, present your solution as what? Relief. This is best for health or financial what? Services, or maybe skill training or business offers. You've seen it on TV, the person is sick and dying, and then you introduce the drug, and then the next moment they are up and are going about their what? Their businesses. So this is an example of the problem agitate what? Solution or PAS model. Then you have the FAB or product focused what? Model. The features, advantages, and what? Benefits. For instance, you have a camera. The feature is that it's a 4K camera. What is the advantage? Ultra clear what? Resolution. Now, what is the benefit? Why do I need ultra clear resolution? That's the benefit. It makes your videos look what? Cinematic and what? Professional. So this FAB or the feature, advantages, benefit model is suited for tools, devices, software, and services. If you want to sell devices, software, tools, FAB is the ideal. The next thing we'll look at is an advert script what? Structure. That's the video version. If you want to make a video advert, the structure of the script is you start with what is known as what? A pattern interrupt. So it has about 5 segments. The first one is the hook or attention. Try to get it in what? 0 to 3 what? Seconds. So this is called the pattern what? Interrupt. The next one is the problem or desire. State pain or what? Want. You have to state what the problem is or what the audience wants. The next one is to offer the solution and what? Benefits. So you show solution and what? Key gains. This is within 10 to 20 what? Seconds. Then you have the proof and what? Credibility. This is social proof or evidence within 20 to what? 27 seconds. And then you have clear call to what? Action. Direct action in final 3 seconds. So we have the pattern interrupt, the first 0 to 3 seconds. We introduce the problem or desire, the next 3 to 10 seconds. Then the solution and benefits, the next 10 to 20 seconds. The proof and what? Credibility, the next 20 to what? 27 seconds. And finally, your clear call to action in the final 3 seconds. So that constitutes the advert script what? Structure. Let's break down the hook or pattern interrupt. So the first 0 to 3 seconds determine whether your audience stays or what? Scroll. Use one of these proven what? Hooks. It could be a question. You can throw in a question. Want to write skits, films, and ads that people actually watch? That's a question to grab what? Attention. Another one is a bold statement. Stop scrolling if you want to learn how to write scripts. that actually what? Work. Such bold statements reflect your confidence and could grab what? Attention. Relatable frustration. You can use a frustration that people can easily what? Relate with. Ever written a skit and it felt flat, no punchline, no tension, no structure? That's a relatable what? Frustration that most writers experience. The next thing we'll look at is timing and pacing in what? Adverts. No wasted words. You don't waste words. Every word must have an impact on the audience. So use short sentences. So make sure that every word you use supports what? The message or sells your message. The next thing is visual support. Your spoken lines, your dialogues must be complemented or reinforced by what the viewer sees on the what? Screen. Your visual imagery must augment your dialogue. Now, the next one is strategic pauses. You use silence for emphasis. Pause before the key benefit or call to what? Action. Because when you pause, you heighten tension and attention. So the final one is to end while attention is what? High. Like they say, leave while the ovation is what? Highest. Don't let the energy drop. The call to action should land at peak engagement. There's a golden rule here. If a line does not sell or support the message, remove it. I repeat, if a line does not sell or support the message, remove it. Let's look at platform-specific ad writing. This is your strategy to succeed on different what? Platforms, such as Instagram Reels, TikTok, YouTube, radio, and even Facebook. So if you're writing advert for Instagram Reels or TikTok, your hook has to come in within the first 2 seconds. Subtitles are equally required. Learn to use trend integration so that the algorithm can rank your advert highly, and also use loop-friendly what? Ending. On YouTube, mention offer early. Don't keep your audience waiting. Maintain retention pacing. Ensure that you're pacing, that you're carrying your audience along, not moving too fast or lagging behind. And avoid slow build-up. Avoid what? Slow build-up. And then when it comes to radio, you have to learn how to use sound imagery, vivid sound imagery. Repeat the call to action at least 2 times. And then you have to use clear voice, tone, and what? Rhythm. That's what works on what? Radio. On Facebook, like we mentioned already, you have a broader demographic, a broader population. Your tone has to cover them. So you need a broader what? Tone. Your message has to be what? Clear. And use shareable themes like family, relationships, daily struggles, things people can easily what? Share with their what? Friends. The next thing we want to look at is character and story in what? Adverts. Character and what? Story in adverts. Like they say, it is not what happens, but who it what happens to that matters. So character is key to selling your what? Advert. So even in 30 seconds, your character must be what? Clear. Conflict must be obvious. And transformation must be what? Visible. So we must see your character clearly, what the character is struggling against, and then how he's able to what? To resolve it. So let's break them down into what. The first one is the normal life. Relatable starting point the audience recognizes. That's your starting point. Okay? Now, in this case, your character is in a normal environment. You introduce the character like a mother, for instance, with her children that she's taking them to what? To school. That's a relatable what? Starting point. It's a normal life. Introduce the problem. A clear pain point or unmet desire emerges. The children are probably playing and dirtying their whites, their clothes, their uniform, and it's a problem. How do you clean this up? The next one, you introduce what? The product. The solution appears. Your offer enters the story. What product, maybe a detergent or something, or a soap that will solve this problem? And then finally, you have the improved life. You don't just return to the normal life. Your product has to make their normal life better. So the transformation is visible. The audience wants this result. A whiter white. Okay, the white looks even what? Whiter at the end after using your soap or your detergent. That's a visible transformation. Okay, let's look at dialogue in adverts. The rules are you have to keep the dialogue short and what? Direct. Don't talk too much. Okay, so that you don't deflate the tension that you're trying to build. You don't lose the audience what? Attention. Make your dialogue short and what? Direct. And it has to be persuasive and emotion driven. Remember, you're trying to sell something. You're trying to get the audience to respond. So you should be able to talk in such a way that will persuade them and affect their emotions so that they can respond what? Positively. Avoid heavy exposition. No long talk. Because when you start talking too much, people begin to suspect that probably you want to rip them off, or maybe you're not even sure of what you're saying. So avoid heavy what? Exposition. Now, use questions to awaken curiosity. Use commands to assert your expertise. And then benefit focused what? Lines. Emphasize the benefits of your what? Product. Another thing is visual economy. Visual what? Economy. Minimal what? Locations. Use minimal locations in your videos or in trying to write your advert script. Ensure that the locations are what? Minimized. Too many locations might, of course, increases cost and will equally affect the audience what? Attention. Clear framing is important when it comes to visual economy. What are we looking at? What are we seeing? Who are we looking at? So you avoid clutter in the environment. Strong expressions. If you're happy, you smile. We see the happiness. You don't just say, I am happy. Your expressions must match the mood. Show product in action. That's proof. We have to see the product, the end result of using what? Your product. And then demonstrate benefit visually. Yes, you don't just tell us that this product does this or does that. We have to what? See it. At this point, let's look at legal and policy considerations. As an advert script writer, you have to ensure you're within the framework of the laws. So let's look at the legal and policy considerations. You have to avoid this. False or misleading what? Claims. Okay, don't claim what your product does not do or is not capable of what? Doing. Another thing you have to avoid is what? Hidden conditions. Don't tell us it's free. Meanwhile, you have hidden costs here and there. If it is free, tell us it is free. If it's not free, you have to make that obvious. Offensive or discriminatory what? Messaging should be what? Avoided. Unrealistic promises. Like they say, always under-promise and what? Over-deliver. Don't over-promise. Don't promise things that your product cannot what? Achieve. And then asserting personal attributes about viewers. Don't get too personal. You have to ensure you don't violate people's what? Personal rights. And then also, apart from these things that you have to avoid, you need to be clear about, number one, pricing. Your pricing has to be what? Clear. Your dates, your terms and what? Conditions. And then sponsorship what? Disclosure. If you're marketing an item, are you being sponsored to do that? You have to disclose that to the audience. Okay, the next thing we'll look at is the ad writing workflow. So you start first of all by defining your what? Audience. Who is your what? Audience, or who are your what? Audience. You define who you want to reach with your advertisement. If you're selling diapers, babies use it, but they are not your audience. It's probably their what? Their mothers, their dads. Okay, their parents are what? Your target, especially the what? The mothers. The next thing is to clarify your promise. What exactly would I gain from your product or service? So you have to make it what? Clear. The next step is to what? To choose a framework. Are you going to use the AIDA framework, the PAS framework, or the FAB what? Framework? depending on what you're selling. If you're selling a product, for instance, the FAB product lends itself to achieving maximum impact. The next thing is to write and refine. Yes, you heard me. I said write and do refine. Don't be shy to write, but you can be sure that the first draft may not be what you will use at the end. In fact, usually it is not. So through the refinement, you're able to craft the winning script. So that's the workflow that you have to employ in writing your advert script. The next thing you look at is research. Research is important in writing ads that achieve their goals. So make sure you research before you do write. Okay? So you research your audience. Who exactly is my audience? Their age, where are they? Their locations, their income, what's their mindset? What do they fear? What do they want? So you have to ensure that you know your audience in and out so that your message can be directed to them. The next thing is your offer. What's the promise in one sentence? Ensure you get it within one sentence. What is included? The price, the dates, the bonus. Ensure you get the promise within one sentence. That's your offer. The next thing is unique selling point. Why should I buy your own product and not the other vendor's product? That's your unique selling point. What makes your offer uniquely valuable? You have to ensure you know that and state it clearly. The next thing is your proof and objection. Proof and objection. Why should we trust you? Well, your testimonials. People have used it and they are testifying, right, to the efficacy of your product. And then you have numbers, maybe 1 million users. That's evidence that your product is working. And then you could equally use demos. A demonstration of your product in action. And you need to address certain issues concerning your audience. Their objections, for instance, is too expensive. There's no time. I don't have time for your training. Does it work? You need to address their objections. If your product is expensive, you make them understand why your own product is costly in terms of the additional benefits they will get from using your product or subscribing to your service. So you need to address the proof and their objections. The next thing we'll look at is the ad script spine. The spine for your script. So you use this production ready structure for every video advert. The first 0 to 2 seconds, pattern interrupt, visual plus hook line. Make sure you hook your audience. The first 0 to 2 seconds. The next 2 to 6 seconds, you introduce the problem or desire. Why should I care? Why should I bother about your product? It's at this point that you make me or you make your audience to do to care. The next 6 to 12 seconds, you introduce your offer plus its biggest benefit. What the audience stand to gain. Then the next 12 to 20 seconds, you show proof and credibility. Why should we believe you? Who are you? What evidence do you have to back up your claim? That's the proof. And then the last 3 seconds, the call to action. It has to be clear, it has to be easy, and it has to be unmissable. You can't miss it. The next thing we'll look at is common mistakes in ad script writing. Common mistakes in ad script writing. These are mistakes you should avoid. We group them into 2 segments: hook and message mistakes, and then content mistakes. Let's look at the hook and message mistakes. If you have a weak hook, it fails to stop the scroll. People just scroll past your advert. So you have to avoid a weak hook. No clear call to action. You shouldn't leave the audience wondering what to do after watching your advert. If they have to wonder what to do, clearly a mistake, and it should be avoided. Overcomplicated message. Your message should not be cryptic. It should not be difficult to what? To decode. It has to be what? Idiot-proof. It has to appeal to the general what? Public. Okay? Especially your audience. Your message has to avoid over what? Complication. The next one is what? Slow opening. Don't start slowly. Don't do what? Start slowly. That's a mistake that could kill your advert. The next mistakes are content what? Mistakes. Too many benefits. When you have too many benefits, it causes what? Confusion. No proof or credibility. Who are you? If you can't answer that question satisfactorily and get the audience to trust you, then that's equally what? A mistake. Talking about features instead of what? Benefits. Of course, your product can do so many things, but if it does not benefit the audience, of what use is it to them? So you have to focus on the benefits rather than the what? Features of your product. The next thing we'll look at, these are the final what? Rules. Professional rules for advert what? Scripts. Professional rules for what? Advert scripts. As a professional, you need to follow these rules to be successful in writing advert what? Scripts. You need to have one message. One advert needs to have one main message. Never dilute it. The more messages you add, the more you dilute the message. So keep it to one main message for one advert. Secondly, you have the sell benefits. What are the benefits? Sell the benefits. Emphasize the benefits, not the features. What does the audience gain? What do they have to gain by subscribing to your service or buying your what? Product? That is what you have to emphasize. The next thing is to hook fast. Grab attention in the first 1 to 3 seconds or lose them. Finally, you need to end strong. Make the call to action obvious. Respect the audience intelligence. Don't make them feel they might not be able to understand you. Keep it simple, but and make it what? Obvious. Trust your what? Audience. Let's look at templates that you can use to write your advert scripts. Assuming you want to write a 15-second social video, the first 0 to 2 seconds, that's the hook. Want to write skits, films, and ads that people actually watch, so that's the hook. The next 2 to 8 seconds, we introduce the value. What value are you offering? In fundamentals of script writing, you will learn structure, conflict, dialogue, and how to turn an idea into a treatment and what? Script. So we reel out what you stand to what? To gain. That's the value. The next 8 to 12 seconds is the proof. Practical exercises, real examples, clear templates. These are all included in this what? Package. So you have practical exercises, real examples, and clear what? Templates. So that's the proof. And then within the next 12 to 15 seconds is the call to what? Action. Join today. Click the link and tap notify me. As you can see, the audience is clear on what action to what? To take. So let's look at another example. This is a 30-second brand and offer ad. Most people have great story ideas, but they can't turn them into what? Scripts. That's why we created fundamentals of what? Script writing. A step-by-step class that teaches you story structure, character, conflict, suspense, and the full process from log line to what? Treatment to what? Draft. You practice with real assignments and get a clear writing blueprint you can reuse for skits, adverts, and what? Films. Ready to start? Join the live session today. So this 30-second ad utilizes the AIDA model. It opens with what? A relatable problem to catch your attention. It introduces the cost, interest, least benefits, waking up desire. These are the things you stand to what? To benefit. And it closes with what? A clear call to what? Action. Join the live session today. Okay, let's look at the third example. For a 60-second PAS style ad, we introduce the problem and agitate it. Ever written a skit and it fell flat? No punchline, no tension, no structure. That's not lack of talent. That's lack of a system. Then we introduce the solution and call to action. In fundamentals of script writing, you learn hook, conflict, escalation, payoff, and how to plan using log lines, treatments, and drafts. Write scenes, get templates, craft scripts for skits, adverts, and short films. If you want your ideas to stop dying in your notes, join the session today. Click notify me and show up live. So let's look at the things that make an ad script work. The first one is the hook. Stop the scroll. Grab attention in the first 1 to 3 seconds. Then the problem or desire. Why should I care? Make the audience feel seen. Then the solution. Key benefits. What you offer and what they gain. You have to state them clearly. Then you proof or trust. Why should they believe you? You introduce the numbers, the testimonials, and demonstrations. Then call to action. What to do now. Register, click, call, DM. Make it stupidly clear. The next thing we'll look at is your best workflow for any script. So first of all, you write 10 hooks and then pick the strongest one. The next one, you choose one framework. Is it AIDA, PAS, or 3-act micro story? Depending on what your message is, you choose the framework that best suits your goal. Then you draft a 30-second version first. You draft it, cut it to 15 seconds, from 30 seconds to 15 seconds, and then you expand it to 60 seconds. So assuming you're doing a 60-second ad script, you first of all make a 30-second version, cut it to 15 seconds, and then expand it to 60 seconds. Then finally you read aloud. You read it aloud so that you can hear how it sounds. Remove slow lines and make your call to action stupidly clear. What are the key takeaways from today's class? We'll start first of all by looking at skits. What are the key takeaways for skits that we've learned today? A skit usually requires one premise, one game, and then you escalate in beats, and then end sharply. You need to hook the audience in 10 seconds or you stand the chance of losing their attention. What of adverts? An advert needs to have one message. Sell benefits. What are the benefits the audience need to gain? And then hook fast. Show proof or evidence of your solution. Make the call to action obvious. Your audience shouldn't wonder what to do at the end of the advert. And then make it easy for them to act on your call to action. Then for skits and adverts, you have to be economical with your dialogue. Avoid long expositions. Learn to use short sentences that hit the point. Use visual storytelling and also be platform aware when you're writing. You have to be aware of which platform you're writing for. And then always start from real life, relatable experiences to pull in your audience. Then you can twist it, you can heighten, or you can persuade. Remember, the best scripts are not written. They are rewritten. So learn to read aloud, cut ruthlessly, don't be shy. Cut off anything that will not contribute to your message, and then shoot confident. Thank you. Hope to see you next time.